Are you ready to embark on a journey of success? To discover your true potential in the untold stories of careers in life sciences? Welcome to PATHFINDER by the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. With your host, Tommy Soares, discover the untold stories of industry scientists and unveil the secrets to excelling in your career. Thank you for joining us once again, and remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares. I am the Director of Scientific Strategy and Relations of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology and Infectious Disease. And today on PATHFINDER, I have the pleasure of welcoming Harshal Jawale, development scientist at Alexion-AstraZeneca. Harshal was born and brought up in India. He has a background rooted in chemistry with academic roots in India. He earned his bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of Mumbai and pursued a master's degree in chemistry at the Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai. Later, he ventured to the United States in 2015, enrolling at Purdue University. Here, he completed his PhD in physical organic chemistry under the guidance of Prof. Paul UNTOLD in the Department of Chemistry. His research focused on probing the reactivity of very elusive phenylnitrene intermediates and investigating the electronic nature of their precursor azides using advanced mass spectrometry techniques. In 2021, armed with expertise in mass spec, he graduated and transitioned to the role of scientist at Curia Global, formerly SSCI and AMRI in West Lafayette's Purdue Research Park. In 2023, he moved to Connecticut to join AstraZeneca's rare disease subdivision, Alexion Pharmaceuticals, contributing as a development scientist in the bioanalytical and biomarker domain. In this capacity, he specializes in bioanalysis of diverse biological samples, structural determination and characterization, assessment of drug efficacy and stability in different biological matrices and biosimilars using liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry, LCMS technology. Welcome, Harshal. So good to meet you. So good to have you on the program.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Soares. It's a pleasure to be associated with the PATHFINDER program and to be able to interview for this program. And I'm looking forward to have an amazing conversation with you and hopefully provide some of my experiences and learnings so that students in different stages of their career find something helpful from our conversation.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point here. I thank you so much for your introduction in that way, because it's really what we're looking for here. We're trying to unpack your life, Harshal. We're trying to unpack the journey, your career trajectory, and what you have found to be helpful tools for success all along the way. I am so excited to hear a little bit what your upbringing was like, and you say you come from a family that is rooted in science, in chemistry. Tell us a little bit about this upbringing, and as far as you want to take us back, we'll gladly listen.
Definitely. So, yeah, as you said, my family has a science background. My mother is a specialist in botany, and my father is also a chemist himself, and a really accomplished one at that. So, yeah, I was born and brought up in Mumbai. It's a buzzing city full of people, full of life, both figuratively and actually. And it's a it's almost like New York, but 10 times as more intense is how I would like to put it. And so I enrolled in the VG Vazai Kedkar College, which is affiliated with the University of Mumbai. So technically, I'm a University of Mumbai student, and it is there where I first had an inclination towards chemistry, where I realized that I understood chemistry much more than I understood the other physics, math, or any other areas. And I think also because my father was a chemist itself, I think in my genetic coding there was a gene that was passed on. uh, so yeah, with that, with chemistry as my background, I enrolled in the Institute of Chemical Technology, also called as popularly known as ICT, which is also in Mumbai, for my master's course. And ICT is one of the few premier institutes in India that offers you the opportunity to do research at the master's level. And so that is where I was first introduced to research, where I did a lot of organic chemistry, some organic chemistry reactions in round bottom flasks, etc. So that is where I was introduced to research, and I felt like this is something I was really interested in, and this is something I would like to do for the rest of my life. And with that in mind, I applied for various different universities in the US. Whichever universities offered various different programs in chemistry. Then I got into Purdue University in 2015, and I arrived in West Lafayette. Uh, Dr. Paul Wenthold was the lab I was interested in because his lab offered me the opportunity to explore this organic reactivity in a much more detailed manner. Where I went into, where I zoomed in into the organic molecules, and I looked at the bond energies and the electrons and the electronic energies, band energies, that kind of thing. So very fundamental chemistry. So that's the reason why I chose to be with Dr. Wenthold, and I really enjoyed going deep diving into chemistry. Whatever lessons I learned from my master's thesis research was I did it in 10 times as much more in much more detail than than I did it in my master's. And so after that, I graduated in 2021, and I took up my job as a scientist in Curia Global, another a company in Research Park. And there I worked as a scientist, where I was first introduced to the world of pharmaceutics. So with my expertise and my knowledge and experience with mass spectrometry and liquid chromatography technologies, I was able to learn how to use these expertise and this skill set and convert them from the organic chemistry background to the pharmaceutics background. So this is where I was first introduced to pharmaceutics, the APIs, the small molecules, impurities, and all those associated pharmaceutical compounds. And later on, very recently in 2023, I moved to Alexion-AstraZeneca, which is Alexion is the rare disease unit of AstraZeneca. And here I have moved to becoming an analytical scientist, where I'm using LC-MS technologies again to study the efficacies and stabilities of different drugs in various biological matrices. So yeah, that's been the journey so far.
Unbelievable. So and you make it sound like, oh, so that's so easy. So, but let's go and start unpacking some of this, because I think it's such again, it's a story that maybe we do hear, but I don't think we've heard it on this program, is having the impact of your parents being scientists on your, maybe your journey, or at least the direction of where you ended up taking your journey. What were the do you remember hearing much science conversation at the dinner table, at the breakfast table, or was there any interaction of scientific talk between your mom, the botanist, and your father, the chemist, or were those fields too far apart that they didn't really talk about science and you didn't hear much at home? I mean, tell us a little bit if you can.
Well, I actually didn't hear anything at home because my father and my mother was, although with a background of botany, she was still a homemaker, so she was not employed anywhere. But my father was the one who was employed, and but he was the one who never brought his work at home. So he always, we never discussed science at our dinner table. Never really. Even when I became a scientist myself,
Yes.
we rarely have scientific science related talks on the dinner table.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
interesting. But so do you think he was an influence for you to pick the direction here? Was it maybe like, oh, well, my dad did it, so I can do it too, or I should do it as well? What was that thought process in your mind?
Well, he was definitely a big factor in educating me about what all career options and career paths that I can take. And yeah, I mean, I was even open to doing engineering or being a doctor, or a scientist, because I'm one of those students who is not very well planned. So I just take things as they come. I cross the bridge when I get to that. But all the way, my father being in the industry for so long, his experience always kind of helped. He always guided me with, look, if you do this, this is what you can do in your career path as you progress. However, if you choose this as your career path, that this is where you can go in the next 10 or 15 years. So he was definitely very influential in terms of knowing what to do in any part of the career that I take. And luckily and well, fortunately, when I took a scientist, that is the path that he himself went on. So it was easy for me to just follow his footsteps and and just seek guidance from him at all point of time. So definitely, yeah, his help was really appreciated.
That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
great. That's really and it's great to hear a little bit of the insight too of how it was. It was more
Yes.
career type advice rather than scientific pursuit
Yes.
type advice. Um, what was it like then at this Institute of Chemical Technology in Mumbai? What was the atmosphere like in terms of other students, other profs? What was your interaction like as you were pursuing your master's?
So, being one of the few premier institutes in India, as I said, like research was a big focus on master's program, and that is not usually the case you would find in other universities that are not as well funded as the ICT is. And so that was a big part of the curriculum that we had to go through. And typically, how that worked is we were paired up with a PhD student who would be our mentor. We were assigned a project, and in that, he would be overseeing our project, that he would be guiding us in how to conduct a research. And at the same time, we will be observing the PhD student in his research, and then trying to find out how research works, what kind of questions that need to be asked in a research, and how do you approach problems that you encounter at different points of your research. So these are some things that I was introduced to as a part of my curriculum. And the professors, they were all most of the professors that I came across, who taught me, they were all affiliated with the Institute of Chemical Technology, but at some point of their time, they had spent some time abroad, like maybe as a postdoc or as a PhD student in different countries. And what they did was they brought the good positives and the great things about what they enjoyed in their experience to ICT, and they made it they constantly changed the structure of the program in a way that the students always feel motivated, and the students always feel like they want to they want to go ahead and not just stop at that. They want to go ahead, pursue PhD, whether in India or whether in outside of India. So I think that was an amazing that was amazing to have them as the professors. And that kind of by osmosis, those kind of thoughts just seeped into the students. We were not satisfied with 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 our programs, and we are not satisfied with I won't just do my PhD in India. I want to go to some outside of India, go to some premier institute and do some premier cutting edge use cutting edge technologies, do some amazing research. And that is what I think most of us pursued, and that is what we learned from our professors. And yeah, this was a very helpful environment to grow as a scientist, and a very helpful environment as a student to learn about science and technology and
It
research.
sounds such a rich environment, eh? It sounds like an environment where you are really challenged to bring out the best in you and pursue it. Tell me something. Was it at all like, did you guys generate publications out of this work that you were doing? Were you part of papers? Were you part of the writing process? And if so, what was that like when you saw that, oh, my name is going to be on a publication?
Well, some of us were part of publications, but some of us were not, because master's program is where what is master's program lasts for not more than 2 years, right? So there's not enough time to get acquainted with research and actually do full-time research as at the same time when you're doing your other master's courses, and then you're
Sure.
taking your exams and assignments. So there was not enough time. It was most of like an introductory a course to research, is what you can call it like. So there was not enough material that we could produce, not enough results that we could produce that could go into paper. But some of us did manage to put their names onto publications at the master's level, and I'm pretty sure I was not one of those. So I'm pretty sure the ones who published were over the moon, and they were already their stocks were very skyrocketing for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, to be able to be part of that atmosphere where it's research driven and it's, everybody is focused on that. And it sounds to me that the mentorship that you received from the PhD student that you were working with was also important, and it gave you maybe a boost of confidence in the techniques, right? Lab techniques, would you say?
Definitely, definitely. And it was not just the mentor that was assigned to me, because when I'm working on a project in a lab full of PhD students, you learn how everyone interacts with each other, how they all come together and try to solve problems from their own projects and research. So it was in a way that all of the PhD students were my mentors. And yeah, and I learned so many different techniques from my mentors. And something like, for instance, liquid chromatography was the first time I used liquid chromatography tools was in my masters, when my PhD mentors taught me how to use the technique. And so there were few other instrumentations that I had maybe heard of before, but not actually used them before, and I learned a lot of these technical skills from them.
That's awesome.
Definitely, yeah.
So tell us a little bit at that transition now, like you're applying to all these universities in the United States, and I'm sure, I don't know if you applied, did you apply to places in Europe?
I did, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so tell us about that whole process, if you can. What was it difficult? Was it challenging? Was it like rinse and repeat and just keep applying, keep applying? What was that time like?
So the process for applying for PhD in different countries, different continents is different, of course. So Europe has its own way of admitting students, and the US has its own way of admitting students. And initially, everything is a little what you say, a tricky, because you don't know enough, and some kind of applications that work for European universities might not work as well with the US universities, because some universities focus on your research background, whereas some focus on your academics. So there's a lot of different variations in the way you structure your applications, and just to know about the process of applying to universities is a lot. And so it is definitely not easy at first. It's definitely a challenge, but eventually when you apply to more and more universities in Europe and the US, the process stays the same. So you get used to it, because like when you're applying for the first time, you have to write an essay about your research work. You have to write a statement of purpose. You have to get letter of recommendations from professors. You have to write the GRE examination, and a lot of other things for the first application. But as you go on to do the second or the third or the fourth applications, you realize that you already have the documents in hand, and that you just need to modify them to suit the university requirements.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a little easier when you get used to the process.
That's yeah,
Yeah.
I think, you know, and there are particulars about each application, right, that you gotta watch out for. But for the most part, it is a lot of repeated processes, I guess. So what was it like to get that letter of admittance to come to Purdue? And what did you just get on a plane and you're like, okay, see you later, I'm going to Purdue? What tell us about that transition. It must have been a little scary.
That's how it was. It was a mixed bag of emotions. I actually Yeah, definitely. When I first received the my admit letter to Purdue, I was over the moon. And it was one of the most prestigious universities that I had heard of when I was in ICT. And with my limited exposure to research, Purdue was the one that stood across. And then a lot of work that we did, a lot of literature that we did as a part of master's thesis, a lot of it came from Purdue as well. So definitely Purdue was one of my to go destinations for my PhD. And when the letter came, I was as I said, I was over the moon. I was like, this is it. This is already successful in my career now, even though my PhD had not even started. I was like, all right, I'm in a good I'm in a good place, So
Nice.
yeah, it
And
was.
did you have to choose? Did you get acceptance to other universities that you also considered big or impactful, that could be great for you in your career, and that you would definitely say, well, I really now have to think about how I'm going to choose? Did that happen?
Yes, definitely. So I did get acceptance from other universities as well. But the two things that made me come to Purdue was, number one was the analytical chemistry program of Purdue is very recognized in the world. And so that was one of the reasons. And the second reason was because myself not being a very well-planned student, I wasn't sure what research topic, what research area I would like to explore. So I wanted to get into a PhD program with an open mind. And Purdue's chemistry department has like almost more than 50 professors from different areas of chemistry, all doing amazing work in various areas of chemistry that I did not even knew existed back then. And that's why I came to Purdue, because I thought this is where I would get to know all the options that I could consider. And then I could just choose one based on whichever suits my interests. So that those are the two main reasons why I came to Purdue.
That's awesome. So you really didn't know any of the profs before you came? Did you speak to anybody, interview with anybody before coming, or was it just like admittance through grad school and then you rotated through a few labs?
So it was an admittance through grad school first, and once I knew that I was gonna go attend Purdue University for my graduate studies, I started researching into all the professors even when I was in India, and looking at what they do and their recent publications and everything. And that is when I started approaching the professors whose research interests aligned with my my strong points or my strengths. And that's when I started getting in touch with the professors to know more about them. Tried to get in touch with the students in the research group to learn more about the research environment and the work environment, which is equally important along with the research. So yeah.
You make a very good point, Harshal. I think
Yes.
maybe we can talk a little bit about that too, if you don't mind, because I find that that type of research is can really make a world of difference for you to understand what kind of culture you're getting into. And as we know, culture is very much something that we want to either get into or and be part of or not. And so tell us a little bit about some of that homework you did before arriving or before going.
So most of it involved like talking to the students and asking about how your work hours are, or how is the professor as a leader. Like, is he a great mentor? Is he friendly? Or is he like, if he's a really famous prof, is he always traveling around the world and doesn't really have much time to spend with you?
Yes.
Those kind of things. So these are the questions I typically asked. And about the work environment also, I used to ask the students whether whether the professor, what is his style of managing, whether the professor is a micromanager, or whether the professor gives you the freedom to explore things yourself. Because I know friends and colleagues who excel in both kind of environments. There are some who do really well under pressure, and if you give them that freedom, they're gonna go laid back, and they're not gonna be as motivated to do research as when they are under pressure, right?
Yeah.
So there are some professors who like to pressurize the student, so that so to get the best out of that student.
That's
But
right.
that might work for some, but that might not work well for some other kind of student. So this is something I wanted to explore a bit. And I knew that I was a student who loves the freedom, who is motivated enough that I don't need an additional pressure from my research advisor to produce results.
Yeah.
But then I want to do it in my own, in my own way, in my own style.
Yeah.
So that is something I explored. And I think that is very important to see, because when you are going in a research group, you're not just going there as a independent researcher. You are also supposed to fit in well with the scientists, because that is how your career in the rest of the that's how your rest of your career is going to be, where you are not going to be totally independent. So you have to see that you are well fit. You're a good fit with the scientists around you, and you're a good fit with your mentors and your mentees. And that is something I explored. Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that recommendation. And it's something even that people should do as they continue exploring in their careers, whether they want to go work at a company or not, what's it like, try to meet people from there, ask them about it. Whether you're going to a new university, you're going to start a new project, you're going to start working with a new team. I really like that recommendation because it helps. That homework helps you really understand what you're getting into, and what the fit will be like for you. So
Definitely.
what was it like at Professor Wenthold's lab? What was the atmosphere and culture like in his lab?
So, Professor Wentold was a very laid back professor. Like, he's one of the very chill, very chill professors who seems more like your friend than your professor. So he's someone that you can approach any time of the day, and you have his cell phone number. And whenever you're stuck in the middle of an experiment, or whenever you are reading a literature you don't understand something, you just drop him a text at any point, even at 9 p.m. in the night or 10 p.m. in the night, and he will immediately reply within a minute or two. So that's the kind of approachability he had. And that is something that I really, really enjoyed. And because he had his expertise in physical chemistry, organic chemistry, and also in analytical chemistry. So for me, it felt like he knew everything about everything. So it was amazing to have him as a mentor, as an advisor. And I think my fellow colleagues who were in the same lab would agree to the same. We had a lot of projects. He made sure that we had projects that were independent projects where we work on them as an independent researcher, and at the same time we were also working on the projects of other people. That is, we are working in collaboration with other projects. So
Mm.
we had both of those kind of experience as an independent researcher and as and as a part of a team. And I think that is one of the main reasons when I realized where do my strengths lie as a scientist. That's when I realized that industry is the place for me to be. So yeah, I think I had an amazing time at Dr. Vento's lab.
And what made you realize that industry was a place to be? Can you let us know a little bit more?
Definitely. The main reason for it boils down to the research, right? So as I said before, like in my master's, I did organic chemistry. In my PhD research, I zoomed into the organic molecules to study them at their fundamental levels.
Yes.
And now I wanted to zoom out of everything. I wanted to look at the broader scope of things. I wanted to look at the broader perspectives and see that once I make a discovery, how do you convert that discovery into a product, and how does that product impact the lives of the people around the world? And I think that is something that you get in an industry, because you're not only focused on the science and on the research, but you also learn about all the other research besides yours, like besides chemistry, like biology and all the other kinds of research that would be involved to turn your discovery into a product. And then you also learn about all the regulatory side of things, where before you release your product into the market, what kind of regulatory compliances that you need to take care of. And then once the product is in the market, you do a study of what impact has it had on the people in the world. So I wanted to look at a much broader scope of things than just being focused on the research. And that is why I chose to go with industrial positions. And another reason being, as I said, I realized that I was a much more effective scientist, a much more productive scientist when I worked with a team
Mhm.
towards a common goal rather than an independent scientist. So I realized that I'm way more productive when there is an exchange of thoughts, when there is an exchange of information. Because many times as an independent researcher, when you're stuck on certain things, you don't have as many perspectives as the other people would have. There's When you talk to people, you would always have a new perspective added to your thinking, and that you never thought about before. And that's something that is, I believe it's very important and very helpful for a scientist to progress in his career. So I think that was one of the other reasons why I chose to take the career in industry.
And so, but and also, as you said, speaking to other scientists is really a way to help us even understand the complexities of what we're working on, or trying to find potential solutions to get some new ideas, right? And I think that, again, like it's something that even if you're doing independent work, don't stop yourself from going to talk to people about what you're doing, and try to get some ideas, and see if anybody can give you some advice. I like that a lot. So
Yes.
how did you get the job at Korea Global?
So I knew about the company because the company was founded by one of the Purdue's professors, and it started at Albany in New York. And so that's how I knew about the company. It was a CMO, and I came across the position on LinkedIn, I think, if I may recall. Yeah, I think I came across the position on LinkedIn, and then I applied to the position. And my hiring manager, incidentally knew Dr. Ventold.
Oh.
So they were friends, and they are friends. So that's how they knew that. So he trusted Dr. Ventold and his research and the
Yes.
students coming out from his lab. So
Yes.
that is how he told me, like, I think that was one of the very positive things in your favor for the job. But yeah, the job application was through LinkedIn.
And it was LinkedIn. So I mean, you had to put in a regular resume together and apply for the job. Um, how was the interview process like, or even how was the application process like? Was it easy through LinkedIn?
Application through LinkedIn, it's very easy because most of the times you just have to fill a lot of like your biological information and your demographic information and then your CV. But at the same time, if you're in a position like me, like for instance, I did my PhD in chemistry, whereas when I was applying for the position at Curia, I was applying for a in a pharmaceutical company. So I had to first of all know myself that how my background in chemistry is going to help me in pharmaceutics, because it's a very different world than just a small organic molecule and the world of proteins, peptides, and APIs. So it's a very different world. So I needed to first learn about how I can use my skill set in that kind of a setting, and then I needed to learn how to convince the hiring team that this is how is my this is what my background is, and this is how I will align my background with the work. So that meant drafting a letter, what you say, a research letter, and attaching it as a file where you explain about, where you talk about your research, your work, and your future goals and plans, and that how you can contribute to the company's growth and the research problems that they are facing. So that was one. And otherwise the application process is easy, but the interview process may or may not be easy. So initially there's a screening, the screening interview where you have the HR call you and learn about your stuff. That is when you first realize that a company is actually looking into your profile and is interested in you. And then you have a technical interview with the hiring manager, who you're gonna report to, and he learns about your background, he learns about what you did, how you did, and all those kind of things. And then if he feels like you're a fit to what he is looking for, then you will make it to the third or the final round, which usually lasts for several hours. It's lasts for like 5-6 hours. I've almost given an interview for an entire day itself. And there you have a bunch of like a lot of different people in your research groups who are or will be associated with you, with your position at any point of time. They will all talk to you, they will all try to figure you out as a person and as a scientist. There will be a lot of talks about your technical talks about your science. They will ask you questions about how you solve particular problems in your research, and they would test your research aptitude by giving you a problem that probably they would face in their work at the company. And they would then look to see how you think about the problem, whether, and there's no right or wrong answer. Like, you're not expected to know the solution to the problem, but it's the thinking process that matters. So they will evaluate those side of things, and then they will also evaluate how you work under pressure. So they'll give you instances where you have a lot of pressure, like where you're supposed to have a lot of pressure, and they'll ask that in such kind of a scenario, how would you deal with this? And so then based on your answers, they determine how you are as a scientist, and how you are as a person. Do you get along well with everyone? Because that's the one of the most important things in an industry, right? And so yeah, the interview process is long. It's you get very tired at the end of it from all the talking. And it's very informative as well. You learn a lot about the company, about the work, about the field, about everything. And but I would say that even if after all that, if even if you don't get picked for that position, that experience itself is very important, where you get in touch with people from your field. You know what the company is doing, and you know what the research is going to look like in the future. And many times, as you're going from an academia background to an industry background, you have no idea how your work translates in an industry. So that is something that you learn from these interviews. And I think I personally enjoy giving these interviews quite a lot, even though I do hope that at some point they become shorter, but but so is the so is life.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so, but okay, so you go through the interview, and what was it like working at Curia? What was the day to day like?
Uh, at Curia, so because Curia is a CMO or a CMO CRO kind of a company, so we have clients, different pharmaceutical clients with different stages of drug development and with different kinds of products that they are working on. They would come to us with a different kind of problems, like for instance, there is an unknown impurity in a gel, and they
Mhm.
don't know what that impurity is. So in that case, the project will be about elucidating the structure of the impurity or characterizing the impurities present in the molecules in the gel. And many times it would be about just quantification of certain excipients or APIs or impurities in whatever form the dosage comes to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, my work mostly involved using LCMS tools, using the LCMS technologies to solve different kinds of problems based on like any characterization problems, quantitation problems, qualitative analysis, impurity identification, and structure determination, solubility studies or dissolution studies. So so these kind of things.
Sure.
So yeah.
Is it very different than what you're doing now at AstraZeneca?
It is definitely different in a way because the type of the companies are different.
Mhm.
Because AstraZeneca is a pharma company, whereas Curia was a CMO. So
Sure.
that means Curia didn't have its own products or its own projects. Curia's projects were the projects that you would get from the clients. Those are
Mhm.
essentially your projects, and you're not involved at any other stage in the drug development. So there's a problem with the client has a problem with certain aspects of their work in their drug development. You solve that problem, but you don't know the background of it, and you don't know what's going to happen after you solve the problem.
Yes.
So that's how typically it is in Curia.
And
But
you gotta let go of the project, right?
exactly.
It's like, oh, I never knew what else happened with it.
Exactly. That's how it is. But also one big advantage that this kind of environment offers is that it gives you an opportunity to work on various different types of projects. So like I have worked on and different types of molecules. For instance, like I have worked on small molecules, small organic molecules, large organic molecules, proteins, peptides, DNAs, RNAs, different types of sugars, carbohydrates. So this is a variety of molecules that I'm working with, all using LCMS tools. And honestly, I didn't even know how to use LCMS tools to analyze most of these compounds before, you know. And then different types of projects, quantitative, qualitative, identification, characterization, these kind of things. This is what you have a very broad scope of work that you can do at a CRO or a CMO. Whereas when you go into a pharma company, you go there as a scientist, and it has a certain flow to it. It has a certain set of aims and goals that you are supposed to achieve with the rest of the team. So for instance, in AstraZeneca, I am involved only in quantitative analysis of the drug components in different biological matrices.
Mhm.
So I'm not doing structural elucidation, I'm not doing solubility dissolution studies or any of those kind of things. So it's a more what you say, more focused, more narrow approach, and yeah, and you don't get as much variety being in a role as you would get in a CRO or a CMO. Of course, you always have the options because AstraZeneca is being such a big pharma. You always have the opportunities to go talk to other groups, see what they are doing, and learn about what they are doing and how they are contributing to the drug that you are developing. So you have opportunities to learn, but just in terms of the job description, what you're hired to do, it's very particular, it's very narrow.
Mhm.
So those are the main differences, I would say.
That's so interesting, and I think it's for the first time that we've heard that kind of comparison, and in understanding what the contract manufacturing organization, and contract research organization, is there to do. And as you said, the variety of the projects that come in, you must be on your toes and learn so much. But
Yes.
here is interesting because you're doing a lot of a lot of method development, I would imagine, as well. And that must be exciting too, to be able to quantify and understand what's happening in the different matrices with these compounds. And it must be a different mindset than what you had before. Tell us a little bit, how was that transition to this new opportunity at Alexion?
So, to be to this transition was much easier. I think the transition from going from academia to industry is a much bigger change and a much bigger transition than going from a CRO to a big pharma, right? I think in terms of what I did in CRO, because I learned 10 different ways of using LCMS tools. And whereas when I transitioned to pharma, to AstraZeneca, I just needed to know and needed to use just one of those 10 different ways that I learned. So I think transition from a CRO or a CMO to a pharma would be much easier than from going from a pharma to a CRO or a CMO, because there you're adding skills. Here
Yes.
I had to let go of some of my skills and experiences, So I don't think the transition to a big pharma from a CRO or a CMO is would be much challenging. But definitely one thing that you don't know when you're working in a CRO or a CMO is you don't know the scope of what of the work that you're doing. So in AstraZeneca, I am involved in the process of like the bioanalysis of the drugs right from their discovery to the end point where they're going into the market. So I'm involved at every step of the way, every point of the way, whatever analytical needs are there for the drug, any animal studies or human trials or anything like that, I'm involved at every point of the way. And that is something that gives you a perspective of how an industry, pharmaceutical industry functions, and how a scientist in an industry functions. So I think there are positives and negatives to both. And I've seen people who transition from CROs to pharma because of this reason, and I've seen people go from pharma to CROs because they they want to learn more, they want to keep
Yes.
challenging themselves more. So it's an individual preference.
So, are there any things that you would say you would miss, let's say, from academia to now in industry, now that you've seen both worlds so well, and you're now really starting to get deeper into the industry as scientist role? Are there things that you would miss, or are there things that people who are in academia that are thinking to get into industry to at least be knowledgeable that you won't be doing this as much, you'll be doing more of that?
I think most probably, what would end up happening is what you did in your academia is going to be completely different than what you will do in an industry. And in terms of, because academia is focused on science, right? It's focused on solving problems in the science, whereas industry is focused on solving problems. Industry is focused on solving problems and then converting the solutions to products.
Yes.
So the focus is entirely different. And you would for someone working in academia, I would say you would need to lower your curiosity levels a little bit, because that kind of freedom, to explore your curiosity, to uh, as an independent researcher, when you're working on an experiment or on a project, you come across a lot of questions, like a lot of whats and a lot of what ifs, lot of whys and why nots. In academia, you have the opportunity to pursue the answers to these questions. In industry, there is a very limited scope that you would have to, because in industry you are constantly supposed to churn out results in a timely fashion, right? So
Yeah.
you do not have enough time or the resources to investigate a project in detail. So if you're someone who is a very curious person and someone who just wants to know everything about everything, that might not be possible in an industry. So that is something that I would say. One analogy that my advisor, my advisor used to use was being an scientist in academia is like being is like kayaking. You are the only one on your kayak, and you are controlling its pace, you're controlling its the direction in which it goes, you're controlling everything. Whereas in an industry, it's like the sport of rowing, where you have a long elongated boat with several other rowers like you, and they're all going at a particular pace and at a momentum, and you are expected to match their pace and their momentum and their direction at the same time, and all of them on the boat have a goal, and have a goal of a finish line. So that is how it is, a different environment in 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 the industry. So
Man, I love that analogy. Kayaking and rowing. It's
yes.
great. It's great.
Yeah, it's another good analogy I have come across is being a scientist in an academia is like being a musician in an orchestra, where you work in symphony with all the other musicians to produce a very beautiful music or beautiful harmony. Whereas being a scientist in an academia is like being a music composer, or the one who directs the orchestra.
Yes.
So
Totally, totally.
yes,
I know,
yes,
and as the composer too, right? Like that's definitely the okay. So you take a piece by Mozart, but then it's really this particular orchestra that really takes it
exactly,
and makes it. It's incredible.
exactly.
It's really interesting analogy too.
Yeah,
Well, Dr. Harshal Jawale, thank you so much for being our Pathfinder today. Development scientist at Alexion-AstraZeneca. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and getting to know your background, and such wonderful advice here that you've given us. I'm sure that people that are going to be listening to this interview are going to get something out of this for sure. I know I did, and I thank you so much for that. Is there any questions that I didn't ask you that you wish I did?
um, nothing on the top of my head at the moment. But
Okay,
yeah, I think that's what most of the questions I get asked as someone who is in a who's in an who's in at a career trajectory, and then there are students who are looking to explore their options. So these are the questions that you ask me are the questions that I usually get asked by the by my juniors. Is what I would say.
perfect.
So nothing at the
Well,
top of my head. Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
we got to at least open up some of that so that the junior scientists that are looking up to your success in industry are going to be at least thinking in this direction. And can people get in touch with you on LinkedIn, or what's the best?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I have my LinkedIn profile. You are all, we are already connected on the LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to get in touch with me for any reasons, you can definitely get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I could also share my Gmail, my emails with you, if and you could pass it on to someone who needs it. So yes, I'm
Awesome.
totally available.
Fantastic. Well, thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. It was a great honor to be called for an interview for Pathfinder program, and I'm really glad that I was able to have this wonderful talk with you. And I hope that people listening, some of the students who are at that stage of their career where they are deciding on what career trajectory to go with, I hope that they found something interesting, they learned something new, and yeah, and thank you so much for having me over. I had a great, amazing time talking to you.
Absolutely. And thank you
Yes.
so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you soon.
You too as well. Thank you, Dr. Source.
Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining us once again. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.